He turned off the TV without looking at me, the room going quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. "Get out," he said, like he was commenting on the weather. I stayed where I was, staring at the dark screen, because silence sometimes feels safer than moving. I had been living in his house for 6 months, long enough to know the creaks in the floor and which windows rattled when the wind came off the highway. It wasn't a home, not really, just a temporary place stitched together by necessity and unspoken rules. We didn't fight. We didn't talk much, either. That night, when he asked me to leave, I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just stayed quiet, believing that quiet had always been enough, until the next day proved it wasn't. The TV was the only thing glowing in the room, a soft blue light flickering across the walls like water moving in a glass. I remember thinking how tired it made everything look. His face, the couch, my hands folded in my lap. Then he reached for the remote, didn't look at me, just clicked it off. The screen went black so fast it felt like the room inhaled, like something had been swallowed. For a second, no one spoke. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a car passed, tires hissing against wet pavement. "Get out," he said. Not loud, not angry, just flat, like he was saying the trash needed to go out before morning. I stayed still. I had learned the house by sound long before I learned it by comfort. The way the hallway floor creaked near the bathroom, the sharp click when the heater kicked on, the faint whistle of air slipping through the back window when the wind came in from the highway. That night, the air felt colder than usual. I felt it near my ankles first, like the floor was pushing me away. I didn't ask him what he meant, didn't ask why. I watched the dark TV screen instead, where our reflections used to sit side by side. Now there was only mine. He stood up slowly, like nothing important had just been said, adjusted the hem of his shirt, ran a hand once through his hair, still didn't look at me. I waited for something else to come, an explanation, a sigh, anything. But silence was all he offered, and silence had always been the language of this house. 6 months earlier, I'd learned which couch cushion was mine. It dipped a little more than the others, held the shape of me, even when I stood up. I was sitting there now, pressed into it, afraid that if I moved too fast, the moment would become real. He walked past me toward the hallway. His footsteps didn't hurry, didn't hesitate. Halfway down, he paused. For just a breath, I thought he might turn around. He didn't. The bedroom door closed with a sound so soft it almost felt polite. I stayed on the couch for a long time after that. Long enough for my legs to go numb. Long enough for the house to feel like it was shifting, settling into a shape I wasn't part of anymore. The lamp stayed off. I didn't turn it on. In the dark, I noticed things I usually ignored. The faint scratch on the coffee table from when I dragged my suitcase in on the first night. The smell of detergent on the throw blanket. His brand, not mine. The dust along the baseboards that never quite went away, no matter how often I cleaned. This wasn't my home, but it had pretended to be, and now it didn't bother pretending anymore. I thought I might cry. That seemed like the right response, but nothing came. My chest felt hollow, like a room after furniture's been moved out. I pressed my thumb into my palm just to feel something solid. Why didn't he yell? Why didn't he say my name? I'd grown up believing anger meant care. That raised voices meant someone was still holding on. This felt worse. This felt like being erased. I stood eventually. The floor creaked beneath me, familiar and suddenly strange, like it didn't recognize my weight anymore. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. The tap ran louder than usual in the quiet. I drank slowly, watching my reflection in the dark window over the sink. My face looked older there, tired in a way sleep wouldn't fix. I waited for him to come out, to change his mind, to say he didn't mean it. The hallway stayed empty. I moved through the house carefully, like I was already a guest overstaying my welcome. Straightened a magazine on the table. Folded the throw blanket. Habits are hard to turn off, even when they no longer belong to you. I paused outside the bedroom door. On the other side, I could hear him shifting in bed, the mattress dipping, sheets rustling. He was settling in, as if nothing had changed. I rested my forehead against the doorframe just for a second. The wood was cool, unforgiving. I didn't knock. Back in the living room, I sat again, not on my cushion this time, on the edge. The TV screen stared back at me, blank and dark. Earlier, it had been filled with voices that weren't ours, stories that didn't touch us. Now it felt like an accusation. I thought about the nights we'd sat like this before, not talking, letting the TV fill the spaces we didn't know how to. I had told myself that quiet meant peace, that not fighting meant we were doing something right. But peace doesn't tell you to leave without a reason. Time moved strangely after that, stretching, then collapsing. At some point, I turned on the lamp. The light felt too bright, exposing corners I'd never really looked at. I went to the spare room and opened the closet. My bag was still there, tucked behind his coats like an afterthought. I didn't pack it yet. I just stood there, holding the zipper between my fingers, listening to the house breathe around me. The heater clicked on, then off. Outside, a dog barked once and went quiet. I lay down on the spare bed without changing my clothes. The mattress was thinner than the one in the bedroom. I'd never slept well there. The ceiling fan above me was still. Dust clung to the blades. I stared up, letting my thoughts drift where they wanted. I wondered when he'd decided, if he'd known all day, if turning off the TV had been planned or just convenient. I wondered if I should have said something, if silence had failed me at the worst possible moment. Sleep came in pieces, short, uneven. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the TV screen going dark again. Sometime in the night, I woke to the sound of him coughing, just once. The house settled again after. I stayed awake until morning, watching pale light creep in through the edges of the curtains. When dawn finally arrived, it didn't feel like relief. It felt like confirmation. The night hadn't been a misunderstanding. It had been a decision. I sat up slowly, feet touching the cold floor, the same cold I'd felt near my ankles the night before. Only now I understood it. The house had already let me go, and somehow, being dismissed so quietly, hurt more than any argument ever could. I picked up my bag, not to leave yet, just to feel its weight in my hands, because I knew this was only the beginning. Morning came in quietly. No alarm, no voice from the hallway, just a thin line of light slipping under the curtain like it didn't want to wake anyone. I opened my eyes before I meant to, the kind of waking where you don't move right away, because you already know something is wrong, and staying still feels like the only way to keep it from getting worse. The spare room smelled faintly of dust and old fabric softener, not my scent, never had been. I lay there listening, waiting for the house to sound the way it used to, but it didn't. No footsteps moving toward the bathroom, no clink of a mug in the kitchen, no radio murmuring from his phone like it did on workdays. The silence felt intentional, like the house was choosing sides. I sat up slowly, careful not to make noise, as if he might still be asleep, and I didn't want to wake him, even now. The floor was cold under my feet, colder than last night, or maybe I just noticed it more. I folded the blanket the way I always did, corners tucked in neat. Muscle memory, something to do with my hands. The door creaked when I opened it, and my heart jumped before I could stop it, but nothing followed. No voice telling me to keep it down, no door opening in response. The hallway looked longer in the morning light, less forgiving. I walked past the bedroom door without stopping this time, didn't press my forehead to the frame, didn't listen for movement. Somehow that felt worse than last night. The kitchen window was fogged from the cold outside. Gray sky, the kind that can't decide whether it's finished with rain or just getting started. I filled the kettle with water and set it on the stove. Turned the knob. The click sounded too loud. I waited for the whistle. It didn't come right away. While the water warmed, I leaned against the counter and stared at the sink. A single plate sat there from last night. His plate. I hadn't washed it. Not out of spite. Just because. The kettle finally began to hum. Low at first, then louder. I poured the water over a tea bag I didn't really want and wrapped my hands around the mug. The heat helped. A little. I took my tea into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch. Not my cushion. Sunlight hit the TV screen at an angle, turning it into a dull mirror. I could see myself there. Smaller than I remembered. I replayed the night over and over, like if I looked at it from enough angles, I'd find the mistake. Had I said something wrong earlier that day, missed a look, stayed quiet when I shouldn't have? Silence had always been my contribution, my way of not making things worse. But now, in the daylight, it felt thin, inadequate. I stood and walked to the front door, rested my hand on the knob. The metal was cold, steady. For a moment, I thought about opening it and stepping outside, just to prove I could, but I didn't. Instead, I went back to the spare room and opened the closet. My bag waited where I'd left it, slightly collapsed on one side. Patient. I pulled it out and set it on the bed. Packing felt like admitting something out loud, so I moved slowly, folded my clothes one by one. The shirt I wore on my first day here, the sweater I always reached for when the house got too quiet. Each item felt heavier than it should have. I found a sock behind the bed, dust clinging to it. I held it for a moment longer than necessary. Halfway through packing, I heard movement, a door opening, footsteps. My breath caught in my chest before I could control it. He walked down the hallway without looking toward the spare room, went straight to the bathroom, the sound of the sink turning on, water running. I waited. Maybe he'd say something. A good morning. An explanation. Nothing came. When he passed the doorway again, I stood still, my hands resting on the open bag. He glanced in. Just once. His eyes moved over the room like it was already empty. Morning, he said. Not unkind, not warm, just polite. Morning, I replied. My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. He nodded, then kept walking. That was it. No mention of last night, no urgency in his step, no sign that anything had changed, except everything had. I finished packing after that, faster now, zipped the bag closed and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at it. I realized something then. This wasn't an argument waiting to be resolved. It was an ending already decided. I carried my bag to the front door and set it down. Not to leave yet, just to place it where it belonged. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, shaking loose a few stubborn leaves. They skittered across the pavement like they were trying to get somewhere important. I wondered where I would go, who I would call. The thought felt distant, unfinished. From the kitchen, I heard him open the fridge, close it again. Life, continuing without me. I stood there a long time, hand resting on the doorframe. This house had rules I'd learned by heart. Where to stand, when to speak, when not to. But no one had told me how to leave. The quiet followed me as I picked up my bag. And I knew. Whatever answers I was looking for weren't going to come from him. Not today, maybe not ever. I opened the door. The air outside was colder than I expected, and somewhere deep in my chest, something began to shift. Not relief, not yet, but the first small ache of understanding. The knock came just after noon, not loud, not rushed. 3 firm taps that didn't belong to the rhythm of the house. I was sitting on the edge of the couch, my bag still by the door like a decision I hadn't finished making. The sound landed heavy in the room, heavier than it should have been. Visitors never came here. Not without warning. I didn't move right away. The knock came again. Same pace, same pressure. Patient, certain. I walked to the door and opened it halfway. A man stood on the porch, rain darkening the shoulders of his jacket. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. lines at the corners of his eyes, shoes scuffed from long roads. He held no clipboard, no badge, just his hands, empty and visible. "Is he home?" he asked. He said the name carefully, like it mattered how it landed. I nodded once, didn't invite him in. The man's eyes drifted past me into the house, like he was counting rooms without meaning to, measuring space or absence. "I won't take much time," he said. Not a question, not a demand. I opened the door wider. The living room felt smaller with him in it. The air changed, as if the walls were listening differently now. He didn't sit right away, just stood near the window, looking out at the street. The rain had slowed to a mist, clinging to the glass. "How long have you lived here?" he asked. 6 months, I said. He nodded like that confirmed something. From the hallway I heard movement, a pause, then footsteps. He came into view, stopped short when he saw the man. His shoulders tightened, not much but enough. His face rearranged itself into something neutral. "What's this?" he asked. The man turned. Their eyes met. "Just a conversation," the man said. Calm, level. I stepped back, suddenly aware of how close I was standing to both of them, like I'd wandered into the wrong place at the wrong time. They spoke in careful sentences. Nothing raised, nothing sharp. Words moved around each other instead of landing. The man asked about dates, about places, about people whose names I didn't recognize. My name wasn't said, not once, but I felt myself being outlined by every question. I watched hands instead of faces, the way the man folded his fingers together, the way he kept his palms open, the way he crossed his arms without realizing it. At one point, the man glanced at me. "You ever notice anything unusual?" he asked. I thought of late-night phone calls that ended when I entered the room, doors locked without explanation, conversations that stopped just short of meaning. I swallowed. "I didn't ask questions," I said. The man nodded slowly. Not disappointed, not surprised. "That tracks," he said. Silence settled again, thicker now. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a card, set it gently on the coffee table. Didn't slide it, didn't push it toward anyone. "If you remember something later," he said, looking at me now, "anything at all, you can call." I nodded, though I didn't trust my voice. He turned toward the door, paused. "This wasn't about you," he added, softly. But I knew that wasn't entirely true. After he left, the house felt off balance, like furniture had been shifted an inch to the left and no one wanted to admit it. He didn't look at me, didn't speak, just went back down the hallway and closed the bedroom door. I stood alone in the living room, staring at the card on the table, white against dark wood, clean edges. I realized then, being told to leave hadn't been about distance, it had been about control, and whatever I'd been pushed away from had just stepped into the light. I picked up the card. My name still hadn't been said, but I knew I was already part of it. The card stayed in my pocket all afternoon, flat light. I could feel its edges every time I moved, like it was reminding me it existed. I didn't take it out, didn't read the number. Just knowing it was there felt like crossing a line I hadn't meant to step over. The house settled back into its old sounds after the man left. The heater clicked on, then off. Somewhere, a pipe knocked twice and went quiet. Normal noises trying to pretend nothing had happened. I sat at the kitchen table and watched dust drift through a thin strip of sunlight. It moved slowly, like it had nowhere important to be. I wondered how many afternoons I'd spent here without really being here. From the hallway came the sound of the bedroom door opening. He stood there for a moment, not looking at me. His jaw was tight, not angry, controlled, like he was holding something in place with effort. "You didn't have to talk to him," he said. I kept my eyes on the table. "I didn't," I replied. That wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. He poured himself a glass of water, drank it in one long swallow, set the glass down harder than necessary. "You should have told me," he said. "Told you what?" I asked. He didn't answer. The silence stretched between us, filled with things that had never been named. I realized then how much of our life had been built on not asking, on letting gaps exist, because filling them felt dangerous. I didn't know what was important, I said quietly. That made him look at me. Just once. His eyes flicked over my face, like he was searching for something specific, something he didn't find. He turned away again. "This isn't your problem," he said. The words were flat, rehearsed, but they landed wrong. I thought about all the ways I'd adjusted myself in this house, learned when to speak, when to stay silent, how to move without drawing attention, how to belong without asking permission. Problems don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they grow in the quiet. "I live here," I said. The words surprised both of us. He let out a breath through his nose. Not a laugh, not a sigh. Something in between. "For now," he said. And there it was. I stood, chair scraping softly against the floor. The sound felt too sharp in the room. "I wasn't trying to get involved," I said. "I was just here." He nodded, too quickly. "That's the issue," he said. I understood then what he meant. Being present meant seeing. Seeing meant risk. The card pressed against my leg as I shifted my weight. I didn't reach for it, didn't need to. He walked past me toward the bedroom again, stopped in the doorway. "You should leave tonight," he said. Not unkindly, not cruelly, just final. I didn't argue. I watched his back as he disappeared into the room, the door closing behind him with the same soft certainty as the night before. I stood alone in the kitchen, hands resting on the table, feeling the weight of everything we hadn't said settle into place. The house no longer felt like it was pushing me out. It felt like it was protecting itself. I went to the spare room and finished packing what little I had left. Every zipper sounded loud. Every folded shirt felt like a small confession. When I was done, I sat on the bed and took the card out of my pocket for the first time. Just a name, a number. No explanation. I traced the letters with my thumb, thinking of the man's tired eyes. The way he'd looked past me into the house, the way he'd said this wasn't about me, but it was. It had always been. As evening settled in, the light outside turned soft and low, the kind of light that makes everything look temporary. I carried my bag to the door and paused, not because I hoped he'd stop me, but because leaving felt like choosing something for myself. I opened the door. The air was cool, clean, honest. Behind me, the house stayed quiet, and for the first time I understood. Some silences aren't meant to be endured. They're meant to be broken. The door closed behind me without a sound. No final click, no echo. I stood on the porch for a moment, my bag resting at my feet, waiting for something to happen. A voice. A step. The door opening again. Nothing came. The evening air brushed against my face, cool and steady. It smelled like damp pavement and distant leaves. The kind of smell that tells you the day is ending whether you're ready or not. I picked up my bag and walked down the steps. Each one felt deliberate, chosen. The street was quieter than usual. A few porch lights flickered on, one by one, like people deciding to stay in for the night. Somewhere down the block, a television laughed behind closed curtains. I walked without a destination, just away. With every step, the house behind me felt smaller, not less important, just finished. I thought about the things I'd never said, the questions I'd swallowed, how easily silence had dressed itself up as peace. It hadn't been peace, it had been permission. I reached the corner and stopped. The traffic light blinked yellow, undecided. I watched it for a long time, letting the rhythm of it settle my breathing. The card was still in my pocket. I took it out now, finally. Read the name again, the number. I didn't call, not yet. Some truths need space before they're spoken. I folded the card once and tucked it back inside my jacket, close to my chest. A bus passed, stirring the air. I caught my reflection in the dark window of a parked car. My face calmer than I expected, Not relieved, not whole, but no longer shrinking. I realized something then. I wasn't leaving because I'd been told to. I was leaving because I could. That difference mattered. I found a bench near the small park at the end of the street and sat down. The wood was cold through my coat. The trees overhead rustled softly, shedding what they no longer needed. I rested my hands on my knees and let the quiet exist without trying to fill it. This quiet felt different. It didn't demand anything from me. In the distance, I could still see the roof line of the house, just the edge of it, barely there. It looked ordinary, harmless. But I knew better now. Some places don't hurt you loudly. They hurt you by asking you to disappear. I stood up, shouldered my bag, and turned away. The street opened up ahead of me, wide and uncertain, not safe, not promised, but honest. I took a breath and started walking again, the sound of my steps steady on the pavement. Behind me, the house remained silent. Ahead of me, the night waited. Not with answers, but with room enough to ask my own questions. And for the first time, that felt like enough.